I read a quote that says, "The cross is the victory, the resurrection is the triumph. The resurrection is the public display of the victory, the triumph of the crucified one." So really what looked like another failed prophet that had died on the cross actually is the Son of God. And with his death and resurrection, he brings an entire new reality. And he simply asks us which we're going to believe. Do we think he's Lord, or do we think he's a liar or a lunatic? And once we see that all along Jesus wasn't this failed prophet, but a king being entered into this new kingdom, we look back and see that even his death was pointing at that. There's a book called Jesus for President, and one of the things that they talk about in the book is there's a crazy connection between the way Jesus was crucified and the way that they would actually usher in a new Caesar or a new Roman emperor. So there was a celebration and a procession that took place when a new Roman emperor would be installed, and it had some of the following elements in it. Whenever a new Caesar was introduced, they had a coronation and procession. He would be surrounded by soldiers, and the soldiers would give him a purple robe to put on, and they would also give him an olive wreath as a crown. They would shout praise for the new Caesar, and the procession would continue. In the middle was the new Caesar, and walking behind him would be a sacrificial bull, whose death and blood would mark this Caesar's divine rule. Walking next to the bull would be a slave who carried an axe to kill the bull as a sacrifice. The procession would move up to the highest hill in Rome, called Head Hill. And when they arrived at the temple on this hill, the new Caesar would be offered wine mixed with myrrh. He would take it as if he was going to accept it, but then he would give it back. And after the wine was poured out, they would sacrifice the bull. The new Caesar would have his second in command on his right and his third in command on his left as they entered the temple. And finally, they believed that the gods would send a divine seal of approval for the new Caesar, because the Romans believed that Caesar was a son of the gods. And so they believed that the gods would send a sign saying, yeah, this is the right guy. And that sign of approval could be a flock of doves or a solar eclipse, some sort of sign or symbol that the gods were sending to them. And then we look at Jesus, and when Jesus was crucified, they had a trial and a procession. Jesus was also surrounded by soldiers, but these soldiers were mocking and beating him. They sarcastically got him a purple robe, and they placed a crown of thorns on his head. The soldiers sarcastically shouted, "Here he is, the King of the Jews." And the procession began, but instead of a bull, Jesus himself would be the sacrifice. The sacrifice can't carry their own instrument of death, so they found a man named Simon of Cyrene, and he carried Jesus' cross for him. Then Jesus was led up to Golgotha, which is often known as the Hill of the Skull or Skull Hill, but in Aramaic it can also be translated as Head Hill. Then Jesus was offered wine, which he refused, and immediately after refusing it, in the Gospel of Mark, it's written, "And they crucified him." Next, we're told about the two people being crucified with Jesus, the thieves or the terrorists, one on his right and one on his left. When Jesus is killed, the temple curtain rips in two, the ground shakes, the sky goes dark. There are all these divine signs that truly this was the Son of God. And actually, a Roman centurion who was a soldier who would have gone through many crucifixions, this wouldn't have been the first time that he was overseeing one of these things. And he pledged allegiance to Caesar. He believed that Caesar was Lord. And after Jesus dies, this Roman centurion says, truly, this was the Son of God. So even in his death, Jesus is pointing to this new kingdom, to the arrival of God's kingdom. And his resurrection proves just that God's kingdom is here and now.